Hello, and welcome back to the Girlies Who Get It podcast. I am your host, Alonna Elaine, and today we are diving into episode 2, and we are talking about boundaries. I wanted to get into boundaries today because this is a conversation that I think a lot of people constantly have, where we're trying to figure out what are boundaries, why we need boundaries, how to develop boundaries, how to create a boundary that people respect. This conversation is one in which I am thinking about it from a different perspective. When I was younger, I definitely struggled with recognizing when I needed boundaries, how to develop boundaries, but more importantly, what to do when people who were closest to me were violating those boundaries. And as always, it is from a non-judgmental place, because I do understand that some of us did not grow up in households in which this was normal, or our boundaries were respected, or we were encouraged to cultivate healthy boundaries with ourselves and other people. So the first thing is understanding that a boundary can be physical, emotional, or psychological. The idea is that you are establishing the way in which you want to be treated in a relationship, whether it is romantic or platonic, familial, co-working relationships, it doesn't matter. The idea is that you respect another person and you want them to treat you with respect. A boundary is a promise to ourselves. This is the perspective that we're coming from today, is that we are keeping promises to ourselves. And the promises are literally to our younger selves, to our future self, and our higher self. The idea is that you are respecting yourself enough to say, this is how I want to be treated. This is how I want to guard this inner being, this inner part of myself. And if that for you is thinking about your younger self who was mistreated and didn't have those boundaries, or you are thinking of the future version of yourself who you want to be the kind of woman who does stand up for herself and does have these boundaries, and you know that she doesn't take things like this that you're currently accepting. And then in general, our higher self, this idea of this version of ourself that sort of knows right from wrong, how to navigate life in these emotional spaces in a way that is healthier and more connected and more grounded. Many of us have experienced narcissistic, toxic individuals, either in our families or relationships, friendships. And so we understand the idea that someone will tell you that they respect you. They'll tell you that they care about what you say, but then their actions don't show that, or they're gaslighting you, trying to dismiss the way that you feel, also dismissing your need to have space from them, your need to not be around them so much, or your need for separation. So this is why boundaries can be physical. They can be in the sense that you cannot come around me because of the way that you behave. This is something I've had to do many times with people in my life, because their behavior is so disrespectful to any human. Like on a basic human level, it is literally mind-blowing the way that some people believe that they can treat you. And so there is the idea that you cannot come around me, you cannot come around my kids, you cannot come around the spaces that I physically inhabit, right? And then there's the emotional side. When somebody comes to you and tries to emotionally blackmail you, they want you to feel sorry for them and the outcome of their bad behavior, but they don't want to acknowledge the front half of that, the reason that they needed to be separated from you, or why you're not accepting their behavior in this current state. This is why I always say, finish that sentence. There's a lot of people who want to tell you, that you should feel sorry for them, or I don't know why we're not talking anymore, or, oh, she's now dating someone or married to someone or has kids and now she doesn't have time for us or time for me. But the other side of that sentence, the rest of that sentence, is that your behavior is so atrocious that this person doesn't want to be around you anymore, right? And so you in yourself have to know that your boundaries, because they are a promise to yourself, do you believe that you deserve to be treated like this? Do you believe that someone else has the right to do this to you? Do you treat yourself like this? So these emotional boundaries are ones in which, sure, I can respect your opinion. I can respect the way that you feel, but I can also acknowledge that your behavior is not acceptable in my space. And that, yes, you might be upset because someone has told you no, but that doesn't mean I have to bend myself backwards and into a pretzel in order to make you feel better. The other side of these boundaries is psychological, because our mental health is literally the very foundation on which our lives is built, right? If you feel depressed, if you feel anxious, if you feel disconnected, your ability to navigate through life is going to be diminished, because you physically feel like you cannot move because you're depressed. You physically feel like you cannot show up for yourself, for your job, for the people around you, the things that you desire to navigate through life, the spaces that you want to be in. You don't feel like you can because you don't feel like you're able to, right? A healthy body stems from a healthy mind, but also a healthy mind stems from a healthy body. They are symbiotic. It is a flowing into and out of relationship. And when we are around people who play mind games, they're trying to dismiss you, they're trying to cause chaos in your life. I mean, you would be surprised. Like, the reason why I talk so much about this, and the reason why I wanted this to be my second episode, is because I have been in friendships, connections with people in which women have tried to set me up to get physically harmed, beaten up by men that they were talking to, by trying to pit me against that other person, right? I have been in connections with people, friendships, quote unquote, heavy on the quote unquote, where they're accusing me of something in order to put me on my tippy toes and feel like I'm uncomfortable. They were talking trash about me to our friend group in order to isolate me from those people. These are the kind of psychological mind games that I'm talking about. And so when I come in on this subject, it is really from this surviving psychological mind warfare with people who are incredibly toxic, incredibly narcissistic, definitely on the spectrum of sociopath, psychopath level. So if this is something that you have experienced and you feel crazy, because one of the biggest things that people like this try to do is make you feel like you're not seeing things clearly. Like your reaction to their bad behavior is too much. It's in excess. And yet, I've asked these people before, if I treated you like this, what would you do? Would you forgive me? And their answer is, before a breath hasn't left their body, and they're like, nope, I would not. And this is why I'm saying it is psychological, because when somebody wants you to accept behavior that they themselves would not accept, this is when we know we're dealing with someone who is intentionally violating your boundaries and wanting to make you feel crazy because you should somehow accept behavior that they themselves would not accept. Another aspect of that is the fact that when you see these people in performative roles where they're trying to sort of catch their next victim, they are on their best behavior. They also are verbalizing behavior that they currently do as inappropriate behavior. I've watched people like this do this, where they'll go out and give advice to people about how you shouldn't do this, or you should do this, or I would never do that. And it's the very behavior they do themselves. So this is another part of why boundaries are important, because we're dealing with grown-ups. These are people who do know that their behavior is inappropriate and that they should not be doing it. And when the time comes where they have to behave properly, they can, right? This is what we call kindergarten rules. Treating people with respect, using kind words, keeping your hands to yourself, like things like this we learn in kindergarten. And yet we go through life and people act like, oh, they've forgotten that, or they're not sure. So when we get clear on what our boundaries are, it is us coming back to ourselves and giving ourselves permission to say that that behavior is not acceptable for me. And even if you are going to pretend like you don't know and you're going to try and gaslight me into accepting this behavior, I'm not going to. So if you are someone who is struggling with establishing boundaries, I want you to think back, first of all, without feeling shame or guilt for yourself, is when was boundaries brought up in your house? How was that subject discussed, or how was it honored with your parents, with your siblings? Most of us will find that it wasn't, right? As someone who has children now, I am very clear on identifying boundaries for my kids, for them, but also for myself, helping them understand that I am a human, that I don't have everything right, that I get confused about things, but also more importantly, that I have boundaries too. And recognizing their boundaries and honoring them and their boundaries, right? This is something that a lot of us have not established in our home lives. And one of the biggest things when you think about the connections that you have with your parents, every home is different. So in some homes, it is acceptable to give hugs, to give kisses, to be closely connected to the individuals in your family. And in some homes, that is uncomfortable. That is unheard of. My kids, there is so much love in our home, and this was something that was definitely missing from my own childhood. And not, again, in like a negative, like, oh my God, my parents didn't love me. I don't feel like that was the case. My father was someone who was very clear on being a parent, and he didn't know how those two lines could blur. And that's because in his home life, there was a lot of trauma. And he felt like his mother was not a parent. She did not show up for him in the way that he felt he would have needed her to. So when he went to parent, he was very clear on, I am your father, and that is my role. And then there is me, who wants to be a mother to my children, but I also recognize that softer touch, that need to have a mother who is allowing you to cry, to need you, to want those conversations, to understand why something is happening the way that it is. That is the kind of space that I come from. So if you're thinking back to your childhood or your early emerging adult years, what was the conversation around boundaries? Was there even a conversation? And then think about how that lack or presence of developed into a benchmark, a foundation for how you determine friendships should be. So your early friendships, they are going to reflect the same relationships that you had with your parents, especially the most toxic parent, right? And then when you think even forward is our romantic relationships. So the kind of relationship you accepted and you believed was acceptable is going to mirror the relationships that we established in our home lives, in our friendships, and therefore in our romantic partnerships. So boundaries, if they are non-existent in your home and they are non-existent in your friendships, they are going to be non-existent in your relationships unless the person that you're with is somehow emotionally grounded and aware and present and in their body. It is unlikely that you're even going to accept a relationship like that unless you have been taught and you have unpacked and unlearned a lot of the negative things that you have established already to be considered normal. Now that we know kind of where they have come from and why they look the way that they do, now we're going to talk about how to develop them. So a big place to start is your current connections, especially the unhealthy ones. For me, a big thing that I needed to do was recognize how I felt around these people, how I felt having conversations with these people. So that conversation where I have a friend who was, or don't have a friend anymore, but did have a friend who was very insecure, had a very insecure attachment style in her friendships and even in her home life. She was very narcissistic, so she wanted her friendships to be very isolated. No one knew what the other person knew. And she was the one constantly stirring problems, talking trash about each individual, and then telling the other person that this is what that person was saying. So this was the first time when I realized I needed to set a boundary with this person and that they were inappropriate and absolutely disrespecting this friendship, this union. And the first place I started was how I felt around them, how I felt talking to them. Did I feel good in my body? Did I walk away from this conversation feeling happier, comfortable, or did I feel violated? I would feel like she would disappear for a while and then call me back up. And when other people in our life wanted to know what I had going on, that's when she wanted to contact me and wanted to get information, to see what I was doing, see how I'm doing this, so she could be the official spokesperson for my life. And this is when I realized, okay, this is not even a friendship. And that's where you start. is the connection that you have with this person, whether it is a friendship or a romantic partnership, is it healthy? Do you feel good when you talk to them? Do you feel like you're giving of everything? Like, narcissistic people have this thing where they want to know every little detail about you and your life, but the moment you try and pose those same questions to them, they lock up. And this is because for them, information is a weapon. They weaponize literally basic questions, basic information, and they see it as a currency that they use to control people. So when you're talking to someone and you feel like they're just sort of peeling back all the layers of your private life, but never giving you anything, or they're constantly criticizing what you're doing and judging you, and then playing the victim role in every scenario that they're in, this is when you have to start realizing that, okay, maybe this relationship isn't what I initially thought it was, and I need to establish boundaries. So things that you can do with someone like this, if you don't feel comfortable just cutting them off completely, is maybe not answering the phone as much, maybe not going out with them as much. This is also someone who wanted to, every time we went out, she just never seemed to have any money, or wanted me to pay for things for her children or her life. And it was always done in this like very sneaky, seedy way. So that's a thing. If you feel like someone is just using you and you're uncomfortable with confronting them or saying, I don't appreciate this, then you need to start doing things that create separation between you and that person. You also, one of the biggest things for me was recognizing, would I do this to that person and feel okay about it? And if you wouldn't, then that's a very good sign that maybe this is someone who isn't respecting you and there are no boundaries and you need to establish them. Another thing that these toxic people like to do is give it time. They like to give you some time, give you some space, and then come back around and do the same foolishness all over again. And this was another thing for me, was that when you're away from this person, do you feel peace and comfortable and at rest in your body? And then when they come back around, they just stir things up all over again. This is how you know that you need more permanent boundaries with this person. And sometimes a lot of people, the biggest thing is family, obviously. And those relationships it's an unnatural environment. Like, even though we like to say family over everything, blood is thicker than water, reality is it's an unnatural environment. It's one in which you were born into this family. You didn't pick them. You may not even like them, but you're forced to grow up and live and be connected to each other. So now that you don't have that unnatural environment, would you still be friends with these people if you saw them randomly at a job? And if the answer is no, then it's okay for you to say that I need to have more clear, concrete boundaries with these people. Because the craziest thing is that it's not about, is blood thicker than water? It's, is this person healthy for my mental health? Is this connection healthy for my life? Do I feel physically safe with these people? And if the answer is no, then that is a first indication that these are not the people that you want to be around. And a lot of times when they come back around, they want to put the entire burden of responsibility on you. You're the one who doesn't want them around. You're the one who's not answering the phone. You're the one who has decided that you have this new life and you don't want to be connected to these people. But again, finish the sentence. What is the other part of that sentence? Their behavior is inappropriate and they cannot stop. And therefore, you're the one who has to decide that this relationship needs to come to a halt. The next part of boundaries is knowing when we need them, right? And again, it is based on how we feel. If we do not feel safe around these people, if we do not feel respected around these people, if we feel like the things that we're saying or our thoughts are not given adequate space to be heard or experienced or expressed, and you are giving that to those people, at this point, you're just being taken advantage of. And this is not to scare you or make you feel guilty or make you feel uncomfortable in your body. It is to recognize when the truth needs to be acknowledged, right? Call a spade a spade. If this is your sister and you're the one kind of holding on to the idea that this is my sister and I care about this person, but their behavior says that you would be better off being a stranger to this person because they would treat you better, then there is a conversation that needs to be had. And I'm going to tell you that these conversations need to be had with yourself, because one big thing about people who, when we're talking about needing to establish boundaries with these people, these are the people who are absolutely atrocious in their behavior. And we're not talking about normal everyday people who listen to you and respect you as well. Those are people who respect your boundaries. Those are people who don't even need you to identify your boundaries. But if you did, and you were like, hey, I didn't appreciate that you said that, they would say, oh my gosh, I'm sorry. Let me run that back. Tell me what I did to offend you. Those are not the people we're talking about. We're talking about the other people who do not care that you are a human being, you're alive, that you matter, that your opinion matters. These are people who literally believe you're here to serve them. You're literally here to make their life better. And if you decide that you don't want this relationship anymore, there's something wrong with you. These are people that we need boundaries with, because how we feel when we're around them is not healthy or stable for our own mental health. The worst thing you can do is be connected to people who do not make you feel good about yourself, or while you're in your own body, you feel like you have to completely discard and disregard your own human emotions because they're not being validated. The last thing is how to not feel guilty for having your boundaries. Okay, this is our last point, and this is one of the biggest hurdles, right? Barrier to entry when it comes to boundaries is how to not feel guilty or feel fear about establishing your own boundaries with people. As someone who, my younger self, had a lot of fear centered around confrontation or confronting people when they were disrespectful, and just not wanting to have an argument with someone. And I would tell you that this was obviously stems from my childhood, but a big part of it was that I know when at that time when I would get angry, I would kind of lose it. I'm not like throwing stuff or anything like that, but I felt like I couldn't keep a hold on my emotions during that time. So I would cry, or I would yell, or I would just let someone go until I almost couldn't take it anymore, and then I would blow up. And that is not healthy. It's not healthy for you, because stress literally kills. Like, if you've never seen the studies on it, stress can literally kill you. And that is a way of creating stress in your life, especially when you live with people like this. Like, one of the biggest things for me was having people who were in my space, lived with me in a house that I bought, and they were incredibly disrespectful. They were incredibly unkind and violating my boundaries. And I still, to this day, will not speak to these people. And they still act like their behavior was not atrocious. And that's why I'm saying the fear that we have, I understand that it is very potent and you can feel it. And I want to validate that your reason for feeling that is very real. But the world is not going to end because you tell someone that their behavior is disrespectful. And just to clarify and kind of bring this home a little bit more, one of those individuals that was absolutely disgusting in my home, first of all, these people have problems with everybody. Like, they do not just have a problem with you. What they like to do is gaslight you into thinking you're the only person in their life who doesn't appreciate their behavior or wants to make them feel bad. They have problems with everyone. And especially when you're a family member of this individual or these people, it can be hard to separate yourself from them. But while you're still there, you become the punching bag for all of their trash. And then they can go out into the world and they can be kind to other people because they give you all bile and trash. But when you cut them off and you say, nope, your behavior is inappropriate, you are not going to speak to me like that, I am not accepting that, what happens is they can't keep it bottled up anymore as a present just for you. It becomes something that spills over into every aspect of your life. And I have found that people who are like this typically are very unsuccessful in life. They cannot hold a job. They cannot have healthy connections to people. They rotate people out of their life on a regular basis, whether this is friends, lovers, partners. They are not loyal to these people. They have no respect for themselves. Therefore, they cannot respect you. And this is why we shouldn't feel guilty, because the biggest thing with these people is that they don't know what respect is. These are people who need so much attention that they are willing to literally sacrifice a baby lamb in order to get it. And when you're trying to please them at every turn, it's never going to be enough, right? You're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't. And so I understand, as someone who really, really struggled. I mean, I have been in, relationships that did have domestic violence at the core. And fear was used as a tactic to keep me quiet, to keep me silent. And for me, one of the turning points was that I do have children. And I was never, ever, ever in my wildest dreams ever going to be the kind of mother who did not protect my children. Sometimes it needs to be this external factor that gives you that boost to say, I do have the right to say no. If it's your mental health, let's say you have panic attacks, or you have so much anxiety, or you've had so much depression because you're not standing up for yourself, or you're allowing these people to treat you however, maybe that's the motivating factor. Or maybe it's by getting into healthier spaces with people who listen to you. One of the biggest things for me that changed a lot for me was going to therapy, and having someone validate and listen to what I had to say without trying to gaslight me or shut me down really changed things for me, because it made me realize I was a good person. It made me realize that I am intelligent, I am kind, I am beautiful, I am helpful, I am caring. These are things that I didn't know about myself, because when you're around people like this, we're talking about very toxic, narcissistic, just cancerous people. These are people who will literally kill you internally and go to your funeral and cry because they've lost you, okay? I understand. I mean, as someone who genuinely gets the energy of fear in standing up for yourself, I want you to walk away, if you take nothing else from this, that you have the right to feel safe in your body. You have the right to tell people that they do not have the right to have access to you. You have the right to feel safe in your mind, to feel peace in your life, to feel grounded and comfortable in the space that you hold, whether that is in your home, in your work environment, in families, whatever it is for you, you have the right to be safe, to feel love, to be loved, to give love. Anyone who makes you feel like you don't have that right, that's where you need to start. Flicking people away like a bug. If you've heard my first episode, my boundaries are thick, they are beautiful, and they protect me. And that's how you need to think of it for yourself. If you would not do this to someone else, that is a good way of determining what you should and should not accept for you. Okay, that is the end of episode 2, talking about boundaries. I hope that you, as always, gained something from this, felt a little bit more connected and seen, and feel the energy of love and peace in your life. And I hope you have a good day. And I will, as always, see you in the next episode.